Uh, Good, good afternoon from finally drying out San Antonio. I don't get to say that often, but we had a lot of rain and the sun's out now. So, some housekeeping things first. This is a presentation from San Antonio Coalition of Veterans and Families. Our immediate mission is the assistance for homeless veterans. Our goal is to make it so they don't have to sleep on the streets and get into the services from other organizations in the San Antonio area. We want a smooth transition. Please feel free to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel. A disclaimer, the coalition doesn't endorse products or any one specific service. We do present them to educate individuals about the types of services and products that may be beneficial or crucial for veterans. We urge everyone to use due diligence in researching products and services. Our guest speaker, we're fortunate to have Andrew Sagas. He's a certified senior advisor from Oasis Senior Advisors, and I gotta admit, I didn't know what a certified senior advisor was. In looking it up, I have a description on the screen, but we're going to ask Andrew too for a sort of more insight into this.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Oh, hold on.
Okay,
A
you
little
didn't
bit
want me to.
more. Not
All right,
yet.
good.
We'll get there in a sec. We'll get you on screen. Um, this is off Oasis's website. It's a way to contact Andrew directly, and if you use the QR code, you'll get the website. Okay. And at that point, Andrew, okay. So
Hello, Bob.
enlighten me. What is a certified senior advisor?
So beyond that, that kind of technical description that you probably pulled off of the website, it's a professional certification within the industry, the senior industry, that some professionals have, and it introduces you and gets you familiarized in the aging process. So as the clients that you're going to be working with, the seniors and their families, they encounter, certain things at their stage of life that are different than others. So this helps familiarize you with some of the challenges, the health conditions, the overall aging process, so that you can better understand and better serve your clients.
Now, before we dig into that a little further, you're a veteran.
Yes, I 22 years active duty in the Army.
Okay. How did you get into this?
Well, after I retired from the Army, I had to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So, and luckily my wife was telling me not to rush into anything. So I was able to take my time and, volunteer and help my daughter at her school and explore kind of several different avenues of what the next stage in life is. And one of those was exploring franchise business ownership and exploring multiple options within that realm. The more I looked into several other things, they seemed like not necessarily a good fit. But the more I looked into Oasis Senior Advisors, it just kept the every step of the way, it just kept seeming like more and more of the right fit. And of course, there's some transferability with my last job in the Army, where I was at the Army Physical Disability Agency on Fort Sam Houston here in San Antonio, and I helped process cases for service members who were medically separated. So there's certainly some transferable skills there.
Yeah, some link in that I can see. So someone my age comes to you. I'm not going to give out my age, but I'm obviously older than you are by a bit. Where do you get started with someone like me? How do you help me and my family kind of figure out what's next? What do you look at?
So as a senior living advisor, of a certified senior advisor, but my the job duty position essentially is senior living advisor. So there are different types of senior living. So it would kind of beg to find out what type of senior living are you potentially looking for? Now, there's 55 and up independent living. Sometimes, people may just want to, take something off of their plate where they don't want to maintain the house anymore and cut the grass and cook all their meals, and they might want to live in a 55 and up independent living community where a lot of that is taken care of for them. Um, there's also assisted living for those that may require help with some of the activities of daily living, which include showering, bathing, eating, dressing, and toileting. And then there's also memory care for those with kind of the beyond intermediate towards advanced stages of dementia. So, I would talk to you about your current situation. What brings you to explore senior living in the first place? Find out what your circumstances are. Do you have any particular care needs? Is there a particular part of the San Antonio area you're looking at? And then what's your monthly budget? And then based on that, talk to you about, individualized options that fit your circumstances.
Now, I've got to think the advantage to using someone like you is because the average family doesn't know where to start and they're not familiar with the resources out there.
So most commonly, a word that comes up frequently when talking to families is the word overwhelming. There's generally a lot of other circumstances weighing in on their life, of which now perhaps finding senior living for a loved one or even themselves, this is an added extra layer put on top of that. So what we try to do is help empower the senior and their family to navigate the complexities of the aging process. I guess what a lot of people do now when they're looking for information is, they take to the internet. And if you try Googling, for example, assisted living, San Antonio area, you're going to get a whole lot of options. But which ones are better suited for your particular circumstances? So you don't want to call 15 or 20 different places just to find that the one or two that might have suited what you need. And that's where I can help, having been, I tour these communities myself before I recommend them to someone. So I learn about what they have to offer, and then matching that with what I learned from the family, that helps drill down to finding some tailored and suitable options for what they need.
Okay, so you would help me or my family kind of figure out sort of the area and the what. Do you help in the process of actually applying or getting over the hump of getting in to a facility like that? Where do your responsibilities end?
So the basic, process is whether somebody found me by searching the internet or they were referred by, perhaps they've had, several visits to the doctor or the hospital, and now the family has realized it's probably not safe or feasible, for example, for the individual to remain at home, and maybe it was a case manager or a social worker that called me. But however that happens, I can have that initial consultation with the family, uh, talk to them about their unique circumstances, and then after I, use our system to find some suitable options, I will send those over, and then that's where they can have that chance to review and then let me know which ones maybe they would like to actually go take a look at. And I set that up. I coordinate those tours
Huh.
with the senior living communities. I accompany them on the tours so that while they are there, I can help perhaps prompt and ask some questions that either the family may not have thought of, maybe forgot to ask, that came up during our conversation. Also, if there's something in particular about the community that I know applies to something that the senior and their family had previously discussed, I can help bring attention to that. So I help bridge that relationship between the senior and their family, the senior living community, And then after they've had a chance to review and see for themselves, which I find is that makes all the difference. You can have some of these things in your mind. You can go look at some pictures and read a paragraph on a website, but then when you actually go see for yourself, you see some of the activities that are taking place. You see what the environment is like and see how that feels to you. That makes a big difference. And then at that point, if pending, any other questions, then the family has much more information to be able to make the decision that best suits them and their family.
What are some of the challenges you find in doing this?
Some challenges can be sometimes. So more often than not, it's the adult child of the senior that is the primary client of mine. Over time they've observed mom or dad, or and they've brought it up, they've discussed, and many times, mom or dad may not necessarily be on board, even though, maybe the recommendations from a doctor, observations from the family might indicate that senior living might be, the best thing for the quality of life of the senior. That sometimes those familial conflicts can potentially pose an issue. Sometimes finding the right fit based on their needs. Sometimes some things come out over time, and what initially may be what the thought process is turns out to be something else. I can just give you a really quick example of a few months ago. I had a lady, she was from out of state, in Arizona, and her uncle was here in town, and she thought she was contacting me to help look for independent living options when she came out to visit her uncle, and then they were going to do that. As she was here, she started to observe maybe his health wasn't quite suitable for that. So we went and we took a look at a couple of independent living communities, and even the community staff made the similar observation. He subsequently went into a doctor's appointments, and ultimately it looked like assisted living was the more appropriate. So sometimes challenges being the initial thought process may turn out to be something else. It might be independent living, or might be assisted living at first, but then perhaps memory care is the more suitable option based on the advanced level of dementia. So that's another example of challenges.
Sure. Now, when I read in the paper, there's always the talk about things like affordable housing in San Antonio and the lack of certain kinds of housing, but I never see this subject in the newspaper. So I can't ask you to compare to other cities. I don't know how much you know about other cities, but how is San Antonio doing for providing options for people? Um, do we, is there a wide range? Is it I'm sure there's something we could use more of, but how are we doing, and how stressed is this market?
So I guess it depends on which type of housing you're talking about. Whether when in the primary space that I work in, with the senior living, whether it's independent living, assisted living, memory care, that's a little bit different than
Sure. I don't expect
no.
you to talk about regular affordable,
But
but yeah,
as luckily the San Antonio area has quite a bit in a way of senior of those options, and spread out throughout the city. And there are some that are lower cost, some that are intermediate cost, some that are pricey. So that's another factor that makes it a good idea to contact a senior living advisor like myself that can once again discuss the circumstances that the family may be looking for or needing, and then help filter through a lot of that, so you're not spending a lot of time looking at places that don't that aren't a good fit to begin with.
So let's say I'm the surviving spouse or the surviving veteran,
Right.
and my circumstances have changed, but I think I can continue living in my house on the east side, west side, north side, wherever. But I know that if I live to a certain age, changes are going to have to be made. I can't picture myself as 100 living in the house I'm in. When's the appropriate time to start looking at options? When should I contact someone like you and starting to make plans?
Well, if that thought process is in your mind already, thinking about the future, that at that point is probably a good idea. And perhaps it's something that you decide to make a change on next month or next year or multiple years down the road. There's many different ways that people go about trying to tackle those changes. Some decide to bring in-home care in the house
Mm.
to help for certain things and for a period of time. And sometimes as those requirements start adding up, there comes a point when that becomes much more costly than moving to a senior living community if you stack up enough hours. So that can be a great fit for temporary coverage. Other times, people are looking to family members to assist, and there are times when family members they realize that perhaps they've bitten off more than they can chew, and the caregiving process is much more taxing than they had realized. There's so many different factors, but that's why it's good to one, think about it, to discuss it, especially with your doctor. That would be a good place to get some additional guidance on whether you may be a candidate for senior living, and then reaching out to a senior living advisor
Someone
such
like
as
you.
myself.
Yeah. Okay. What do people need to know about the process? What does a person have to have in mind when they're thinking about, gee, should I contact Andrew? What do they need to know? What's what's the go here?
Well, hopefully that there's a decent understanding of why you may be wanting to make that change to begin with, and sometimes family members are a good one to bring in to assist with that. Also, understanding that senior living, there is a cost associated with it. Now, my services are of no cost to the senior and their family. Um, but just like anywhere else, where you live, there's a cost associated to it. So kind of once reaching out to me to help get an understanding of what that may look like, depending on the type of senior living, independent living, assisted living, memory care. Also,
Okay. You
yeah.
you deal with veterans. Um, are there any special considerations with the veterans that you find? I know we have a state veterans home in Floresville. I know we have others. What do you find when you're dealing with veterans?
Well, being Military City, USA, there's a quite large veteran and retiree population. Oasis Senior Advisors serves seniors and their families, of which here in San Antonio, there's a pretty fair amount of veterans and associated. So go back to the cost of senior living for qualifying wartime service, the VA has a benefit called aid in attendance that can help offset some of that cost for senior living, as long as you have that doctor's diagnosis that you require assistance with activities of daily living. That's a very underutilized and not well known about program that can help assist qualifying wartime veterans that are dealing with that.
All right. Yeah. And I didn't expect you to rattle off all veterans benefits. We'll do other presentations. But you're right. This is Military City. This is You're going to encounter many veterans wherever you go, whatever you do. Any other thoughts? I mean, this has been quite an eye-opener about people who are thinking about the planning process. So anything else you can advise us on or make us aware of or to think about as we enter that, as people like me sort of enter that age, or at least you have to start thinking about it?
Well, things to keep an eye on, whether it's for yourself or a friend or a family member. A lot of times, medication management can be a big driver of what makes assisted living appropriate. You know, having mistakes or mishaps with medications can have unnecessarily, tragic consequences. So that is a common circumstance that brings someone into assisted living. If you're finding, hearing or vision loss can create unsafe conditions in the home, and we hear a lot about elderly people falling in the home, and at that age, falls have different outcomes than for younger people. So that can be something to think about getting ahead of. And then also in general, being aware of any cognitive decline, having doctor or family assist in with that as well. And that's where maybe the memory care, if they're far enough along, can be appropriate. And as far as independent living, it's, you're just trading, you're taking, some of the responsibilities of managing and maintaining, your home, and, taking a few bills off your plate where it's all rolled into one, and, somebody else is cooking your meals, and that's another consideration or factor.
Anything else you can think of adding?
Well, I've
I think
I
you've done a
found,
good
well,
you've done a good job.
yeah,
I feel like that was very informative. But
I mean, I'm glad that I found what has turned out to be the right fit for me after my military service. So many veterans struggle with what to
absolutely,
do next, and luckily there's other resources that can help with that. But I'm glad to be able to help seniors and their families, including veterans and retirees, of course. I have a particular,
affinity.
I have
Yeah,
a affinity for them being one, and having many family members as well. But
super.
I appreciate the opportunity to let the San Antonio area know that they can call Oasis Senior Advisors for assistance with that.
That's a wonderful resource, and it's certainly something that could be very helpful to veterans and families to know that they don't have to go this alone. They can have someone with experience kind of guide them through the process. Like I said, I started this never having heard of a certified senior advisor. I feel I know a lot more now. Uh, that's wonderful. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome,
Very
Bob.
helpful.